I played a love letter tournament on Board Game Arena for the first time. It had 152 players to start with, and you can see I made it pretty far in the event. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you know how to play love letter already, but if not, you should quickly check out the rules. This tournament was a little bit different because it has a last one out mechanic, so instead of having to win each game, you just have to not finish last, because the person that finishes last gets eliminated and the other three players move on to the next round. So gradually whittled down from 152 players down to one. I eventually got eliminated in round 12, where I actually finished second, and I thought that that would be good enough to survive, but the rule kind of changed at the very end, and only the winner moved on, which I didn't realize. But I'm pretty happy with my performance still because I'm the only player in the tournament that played 12 games and never got a skip and never finished last. Never even tied for last. I was pretty consistently in the top three. For this video, I'm going to share the highlights from the tournament that will demonstrate what my strategy was like. This first round is from game 2. I start off with 2 guards. And usually at the beginning of a round, my strategy with the guards is to go after the prince, the handmaid, baron, or priest, because you're twice as likely to hit those when you have no other information. I also chose to go after Jesus because he was winning and I was in last, and in the interest of not finishing last, I wanted to target the guy who was winning to prolong the game and give me more time to catch up. It also helps that the previous action showed he doesn't have a prince, so that kind of narrows the pool for him as well and makes it more likely that I could guess his card correctly. So I guessed handmaid. He did not have a handmaid. So the action continues around. I play a handmaid to protect myself. And then Jesus gets eliminated with the Baron play. And generally, when it gets near the end of a round, I tend to go after the princess. When most of the cards have been played, you kind of just expect that the princess is going to be in someone's hand a lot more often, because if they picked it up at any point in the round, they would have held on to it. So there's some conditional probability on your side. And my guess was correct this time, so I got the point, and I ultimately got a couple more points to move on to game 3. This next round is from game 4. Again, I'm going to start off by playing a guard, but my strategy is a little bit different this time. Firstly, I'm not in last place. I'm 1 point ahead of last place, but I am going to make Muhaz my primary target at this point because I don't want him to catch up to me and risk myself finishing last. I also choose to guess that he is the Baron. You really have to think about the cards that they've played and what card they would keep in favor of that. And in this case, if he had a priest and a Baron, basically 100% of the time he would play the priest and keep the Baron. So I felt like it was a good choice. There's also 2 Barons, so I think that's the guess that probably has the best chance of working. Ultimately, it didn't work out this time, but that was the thought process. And now I have an easy decision. Based on all the cards that have been played, the only remaining cards are the Priest, Baron, Handmaid, and both Princes. So mathematically, the Prince is my best shot. But it's also the only card that I'm really worried about because all the guards are gone, and I don't want to discard my Princess. So I got that one right and ended up winning that round. This round is from Game 5. Crenzio starts by playing a Baron and shows that he has something better than Alex's Priest. That's a pretty big piece of information, that he has something bigger than a Priest. And then Jimbobo plays a Prince against Crenzio, which was a little bit strange. I felt like if he had a guard, he would have used the guard to try to guess what Crenzio had, since we did have that information on him. I also felt like he would play a handmaid if he had a handmaid. So the fact that he played the prince makes me think that he has either a priest or maybe a baron or maybe a princess. So there was a pretty good chance he had a princess, and that's the one card beating me right now, so I chose to target Jim Bobo. It's also important that Jim Bobo and I are kind of competing for last place, whereas Crenzio is ahead of me already. So that's another reason why I chose to target Jim, to prevent him from getting more points than me. And now I do something a little tricky and discard the Countess, even though it's the highest card left in the game. And there are a couple of reasons I did this. Because it's the highest card left, I felt like Crenzio would be targeting it, and there's enough cards in the deck that he would probably have a couple opportunities to do so. I also don't like it that he's protected, because it means he's going to get the first shot on me, and he's going to assume I have the other prince when I discard the Countess, so it's nice that I'm causing him to waste one of his shots, essentially. And ultimately, I just get kind of lucky to end up with the biggest card at the end, but I still feel like discarding the Countess may have saved me this time. These next couple rounds are going to be from Game 6, which was my best game of the tournament. When Sergio plays a priest and then happens to have something higher than a baron, I feel pretty confident that he has a king or a princess most of the time. I chose to guess that he had a king, sort of just to mix things up. Princess would normally be my first choice, but if I had a princess in my hand, hypothetically, I would be targeting the king. So sometimes it's nice to have the ability to target a king when I have something other than a princess in my hand, sort of just to mix things up. And at this point, I know that Bardus has a guard, handmaid, or princess. I feel like he would have played a handmaid sooner if he had it. And just the fact that he has this card at the very end of the round, it's way more likely that he is a princess rather than just a guard that he happened to have at the end. And this round is just lucky for me that I have a princess and I get to the end of the round with it. In this round, I get 2 knockouts using my same strategy before, going for one of the duplicate options, in this case the handmaid, which worked. And then afterwards, I start going after the princess. Don't get it the first time, but do get it on the second time when I target Bardus, and that gives me the win again. For this 4th round, my decisions are pretty standard at the beginning, but I do have an interesting decision towards the end. When Mirand guesses that Bardus has a countess, that made me think that Mirand has a princess. If they didn't have a princess, I would think that they would guess that Bardus has the princess. So that felt like an indication there. I chose to play the prince instead of the guard. Both of those cards can be used to eliminate Mirand if they have the princess. Normally you want to keep a big card like the prince, but given that the king and the countess are both still out there, I don't think it really matters getting rid of the prince. I chose to get rid of the prince because if I had the prince, then Bardus could play a guard and take me out that way. The only thing you're worried about keeping a guard is if they play a baron against you, but given that both of the barons were gone, I chose to make a play with the prince instead. And then when Bardus discards the countess, it becomes clear that he is the king, so I end the game here going 4 for 4. This is the very next game where my streak continues and I win 3 more rounds in a row. I know that Miranda's the princess because he beat the prince, and the king and countess are both accounted for. And then I correctly guessed that Durkenner has the priest. There are 2 priests and 2 handmaids left in the deck, but I think he would have played a handmaid earlier if he had it. This is game 11, second to last game that I played. It gets interesting when Alex plays the Baron against me. It makes it obvious that I have the Countess or the Princess. So when it gets to me on my next turn, I choose to ditch the Countess so I don't get attacked. And then I play the Handmaid, and I end it by attacking what I hope is a princess, and it ultimately works. And this goes along with what I've said before, that when you get towards the end of the round, you sort of expect the princess to be there much more often. This is the last round that I win in the tournament, and it's a fun one because I eliminate all 3 players. I go with my usual strategy of targeting the duplicate cards like the Handmaid and the Prince, and I'm fortunate that I get it right with both. And then, just like those previous examples, I end it by catching the princess at the end. So I win that one. So that's the last round that I'm going to share. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. The last thing I want to point out is that even though I just shared the rounds that I won, I also had strategy in the rounds that I lost as well, because I was always targeting the people who were in last place to prevent them from winning in the rounds that I didn't win. So I think that was a big advantage for me. It was kind of weird because I wasn't actually playing to win any of the games that I played, but my rating still went up from 150 to 220 over the course of the tournament. So that might be a good strategy just for succeeding at this game in general, not just for a last is out tournament. Anyways, thanks again for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks.